Hello? 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 This is the Vancouver Real Estate Podcast.
Okay, so we're here with Barrett Sprowson. He is the Vice President of Sales and Project Marketing at Peterson Group. How you doing, Barrett?
Pretty good. Sun's shining.
Yeah. Well,
Today.
actually, for a change this week, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming down to the studio, Barrett. Maybe can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah.
Sounds like you have an interesting kind of trajectory to where you're at now.
Yeah, I would say probably a little bit more convoluted than most. You know, I immigrated here in 2001, and 2001 takes a bit of time to do that. And got started with in the business. Got started with IntraWest as in the sales and marketing arm of the kind of newly minted Playground Real Estate, which was the sales and marketing arm of IntraWest, selling condos in the wilds of Panorama in the Kootenays on the ski hill. And kind of a funny story how that happened, because I was on this track to be a corporate sales guy, like selling like enterprise software or some boring shit like that. And then a friend of mine had been hired to join from Sid and Pete to join the company and start selling that project up there. And that right before the project launched, they would used to get all the salespeople from all the resorts into one spot and do like this 3-day learning thing.
Yeah.
And there was this crusty old sales guy on the sales team who was taking a leak. And and he was in the washroom, and he turns to the guy next to him and goes, "Goodness, isn't this a load of bullshit? Like, can't believe they got us out here." The guy he turned to is the president of the company, the newly minted kind of Greg Ashley. Yeah. So he walks out and goes to the director of the project. He's like, "Who's this guy?" Out. And so my buddy called me like the next week, and he's like, "So I think you'd be pretty good at this."
Wow.
And it's in Panorama, and I'm like, "Where?"
Oh,
like anything past Hope was like,
So you landed. You were in Vancouver, and you decided to head into the
wild. Like I had never been past Hope, like literally. And when I went to check it out, back in those days, listening to the radio in the rental car, my wife was like, "What are we doing?" So the rental car out there, and there's like country all the way around to country, all the way around to country. I was like, "What is this? Like, what are we doing?" Yeah.
I'm horrible at accents. I once asked a waitress in Whistler, what part of Australia are you from? And she was like, "I'm from England."
I'm from Toronto.
But where did you immigrate from?
Well, directly from South Africa. But I grew up in Malawi, but I did all my schooling in South Africa, and then moved my wife, her family immigrated in the mid-90s, and so it was always part of the marriage contract that we'd come here. So here we are.
Lots of new South Africans here in the last year or two. It seems like it's on the uptick.
Last decade for sure.
Yeah.
It's a constant stream. Like once we find a doctors, they have a good medical program over there.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was I'm always curious, like what was your first impression of Canada, but also of Vancouver?
Well, you know what's funny is it was probably my wife and I's biggest conversation leading up to getting married was like moving here, because I was like I'm African, like I'm not leaving Africa. And so I said I would give it a 5-year crack, and after a year I was like, okay, I'm in, I get it. I'm done. Wow. No, I don't need it. Like I'm good. Like rock and roll. Let's do this thing. So that was the thing for me. Is like it was silly things. Like you're walking down the street and there's no gates and no fences and no barbed wire. And I was like, first of all, it's like you can see people on the street and they can see you. That's weird. But like, how cool is it that I've got friends a block and a half away and I can walk up to their house at 9 p.m. or from their house at 9 p.m. at night and be like, okay, cool. And that hasn't changed, right? In 20 years, you can still walk home. Like my daughter walks home from her friends a block and a half down the street at 9 p.m. And, we're like, just text me when you get there. Text me when you're leaving.
And is it, so when people talk about crime in Vancouver, do you kind of roll your eyes? Or?
Oh, it's, I can see why, because your context is Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right? But like, my brother visited a few years ago, and we were parking when I was at Intracorp, and we were parking in Park Place, and there's signs up saying, lock your vehicle, take your personal goods. He's like, what is that? Like, people don't lock that. He's like, I want to be a criminal in this country. Like, it's so easy. Yeah. So no, like I know that we have issues, and like there's it's different, but it's not like it's just night and day.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you started real estate in Canada, like you started at a really interesting time, because there's been like, it's mostly been a bull market with the exceptions of like, a few trough markets along the way. Yeah. But it's been a great time to start real estate, and you've seen huge changes to the city.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that is interesting about my convoluted journey is that I worked in places that weren't experiencing what the city was experiencing. I always say if I had like done my time in Panorama and come straight back to Vancouver, my financial situation would look a lot different than it does or did, because I would have missed out on, because I arrived in Vegas and the brakes were on. Like I think I touched down in like 2005, middle of 2005.
So you went from selling a ski resort, or the homes around the ski resort, and then you went to Vegas?
Well, I went to Whistler first and did the fractional thing. We sold at Nature's door, like we used to call it at Nature's back door because it was a bit of a tricky sale. Yeah. So that was tough. And Whistler at that time in 2004 was like the market was not hot. So that was like talk about taking your D prospects and turning them into A prospects. Like that was the journey there. Yeah. And then I launched a small sort of single family home site project in Vernon. And that was also a bit interesting because it was kind of right in the time where Alberta was kind of going but not going, and that was interesting. And then moved down to got my citizenship here and got a work permit in the States, and went down to Vegas for a year, and literally was supposed to launch 3 projects in the year. It turned to 1. That project got cancelled because there just wasn't enough pre-sales. Yeah. And by then the writing was on the wall, and my wife was like, okay, we are done with this journey. Like, let's go. And back to Van we came. And that's where I joined. So at that point I joined Sotheby's International Realty. They had a project marketing arm. So I was with them for 4.5, almost 5 years, doing mostly recreational stuff, but like all over BC, in Victoria, the Okanagan a little bit. So those markets were all very different than what was going on in the urban world. Right. Like here was just cranking, and those markets were like post 2010. I mean, post 08, 09, they were in the shits. Like it was the stuff we had to deal with at Revelstoke, trying to close homes that we had sold to like mostly Americans who were like, I don't care, like I'm out. Yeah, right. You can sue me if you want, but I got no money, so good luck. Yeah. And so that was its own journey. And then in 2011 I joined George, and I worked with Magnum Projects for about a year and a half, and that was really cool. That was my first kind of dipping my toe into this urban market at a time where it was just kind of coming out. We launched Quintet in Richmond, and that was my first kind of exposure to, the urban fast floor, sell really fast, lots of humans. It was like a fish market, and I was like, this is a once in a lifetime. Like this is never going to happen to me again. Yeah. And then Telus Garden, same kind of thing. And then I joined Intracorp just after that. So then I've been with Intracorp. I was with Intracorp from 2012 early until just January.
Very recently, right?
Yeah, yeah. And now I've just joined Peterson in January.
Wow. So what prompted the change?
So good question. So very happy human at Intracorp, like really cool company, lots going on. They've taken a big position in purpose-built rental over the last few years, and that was really fun being part of the early evolution of building out that portfolio. And kind of what I evolved to at Intracorp was kind of being really involved with, like, I kind of like to dumb things down, so I call it, what is the box? Like, how big is the box? How many boxes do we fit in there? And what goes in it? So like, what's the spec, and how do we make that really compelling for the end user? So that's kind of the space I evolved into at Intracorp and really found my kind of niche. And I really love that stuff. Like that's kind of making it fit for the market. So that process was, we had a whole bunch of things in the market. My next condo project was going to be a bit of a gap, and Peterson was looking for someone who could come in and help. Over the last few years, they've really built out quite a portfolio and have got to the front end of development, and they're looking to kind of really build out a program and some more systems and that kind of thing. So Intracorp is a really well-oiled machine, and I looked at my next decade and think I could keep oiling the machine, or I could come and help be part of building a new machine. So
right.
That's what kind of got me, was like, okay, this is going to be super cool. Like there's a big portfolio, really great team, well capitalized, and an opportunity to be part of building it.
So for people listening, a lot of people have heard of Peterson, but it's not one of the, the Intracorp, the Bozo, it's not quite the same in terms of like brand
recognition.
Yeah, recognition. Can you tell us a little bit about Peterson Group and maybe a little bit about that portfolio?
Yeah, sure. So the group itself is like I've been there for a hot minute. So let's take everything I say with a little bit of a grain of salt. So January to today. But we have many different categories of business. So when I looked at Peterson 10, 12 months ago, I thought, Peterson lends money to other developers.
Right.
And that's it.
I've always thought of them as being kind of the financial backing of a lot of projects.
Yeah, and that's true. So yes, check. But then alongside that, there's, I can't even list all the things. We have a hospitality group. So we own the Kamana Hotel. We own half of the Shangri-La in Vancouver, the Shangri-La in Toronto, and the Pac Rim. So that we own a whole bunch of restaurants. So there's a hospitality section, and then we have a commercial holding and a residential asset management holding. So there's an income producing property segment. So we've got a mortgage business too. So there's a number of different categories. The newest category would be being developers. So that's where me and the development team come in that we're now taking projects through the development cycle and bringing them to market.
And are you actually, do you have a team that's building as part of the group, or are you contracting?
No, we're outsourcing the construction.
Construction.
Yeah. So we're not self-performing construction, and currently we also third party the sales component of projects. So for example, I'm working on our Ashley project on the west side is with MLA,
right,
as well as Frame, which is on Kingsway and Glen. Earl, sorry. Yeah. And so that's with MLA, and then we have two projects with Magnum projects.
Right.
So those are also west side, so on Cambie and 43rd and Manson and Ash. So we do work with different groups.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is, just for listeners that don't quite understand the process of project marketing and sales, like what does your day-to-day look like?
Tough question. So it
changes probably all the time.
Yeah, all the time. But it varies from thinking about, so if you take the different buckets of projects, we've got projects that are in tempo. So for example, Frame and Ashley are both in a tempo programs, which means we've launched, and now we've achieved a number of sales up front, and now we're ticking along, doing different things every month, getting people through the door, writing deals, going back and forth on things. Like today's market, there's, the buyers have a better opportunity of taking their time, coming in and measuring things for furniture, and, try to do that in 2022. In 2022, I'm telling you when you buy, what you buy, what price you buy it for,
and go line up
and
for
how long
30
you're going to
minutes.
stand in that line.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm saying you want these three homes
every 20 minutes.
You can have this one. Yeah, exactly. So that's not the case today, right? So the buyer has more of an opportunity to go. So I'm seeing that. So, they're saying, I want this parking stall. And I'm like, I'm not writing that in. And we go back and forth on the parking stall. Like how many times, when does that happen? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that's a tempo program. So we've got two of those going on. And so that takes a lot of, like, I'm on the phone all the time or texting in 2024 with the MLA sales director, Melody Han, who's fantastic. Right. So shout out to Melody. Yeah. So like we're all going back and forth all the time about what this buyer wants, or this one has a question, and there's 7 questions from the salesperson, and so that's a thing. And then on the projects that are in the development pipeline, the development team is coming with reviewing floor plans. If it's really early, I'm saying, these are the sizes we'd like on a project. If it was, if we've got a floor plate of X square feet, I'm saying we want 9 homes in there. Maybe the architect thinks they should have 7 homes on that plate. And I'm like, no, who's the buyer for that? We need it to be smaller so that it can be affordable.
Right.
And so we're going through that process of how do we get another home on the plate? So that's a constant kind of thing with the architect, and I'm pushing hard on, to work with the team to ensure that we have the right sizes. And then you fast forward a little bit, and it's working with, again, the development team on like, what is the spec? What kind of things do buyers care about? What are realtors give us feedback about all the time? What do you guys tell us about what people care about?
Right.
Do they want a closet that's 19 feet long, or do they want a double vanity? Like stupid things like that. It comes down to like, what double vanity, or we had a huge conversation the other day about tub or double vanity.
Right.
It's like a
who would have guessed
700
in
homes
1995 that you'd be having this conversation in Vancouver in 2024.
Right? Tub or vanity.
Yeah.
What do people care about?
But I mean, one thing that strikes me, and it's kind of maybe before the conversation about the west side, because I think there's a lot to unpack about where you guys are at on the west side. But like you say, okay, there's a big box, there's boxes in it, and then what goes in those little boxes, and it's tub or double vanity type stuff.
Yeah.
But can you talk about how you, because there's a lot that goes into tub or double vanity, like what can people afford, who's the buyer, does it change whether you're talking about Oak Ridge or Kingsway and Earl? Like, can you talk about how you take all those kind of components to figure out, is it a tub?
Yeah, good question. It's so different groups use different processes for that. So I that's where I would say, what I say is not, that's just how I've learnt, and I'm a bit of a weird mix of an analytical human, but kind of disorganized too. So, but the way I approach that is through data. So I go out and look for data points that then I then verify with anecdotal feedback from the market. So what I've done over the past is I've taken an audit of everything in the market and gone through to like the nth degree on what makes up the homes that are in the market today. So in the projects, so like down to like the size of the tile, so you've got a Bosch dishwasher. Is it a Bosch? Is it 3 series or 5 series? Like what is the that, like right down to the nitty gritty, and then once you take that on a market perspective and you look at it across 10 or 15 projects in a submarket, you can get a real sense of and you track that over time. So I tracked that over time in Metrotown, for example, and it went from 2011, 12, 13 projects where everyone was doing different things. Cabinets from Germany, cabinets from somewhere, a fancy, like a mixed bag of appliances. And then as it got to later on, 17, 18, 19, we're all the same. It's like Bosch cooktop, integrated appliances. It's the light scheme and the lighter scheme.
Right.
No, right. There's not really a dark scheme, and it's light and lighter.
Right.
So that evolution, you can see that when you get into that kind of nitty gritty. So then when our construction team comes back and goes, oh, my buddy at wherever said that they're doing blah blah blah, then we can look at the data and say, no, buddy's not doing that. They're actually doing this.
Right.
And so then it takes away the debate on, I think I like green countertops, versus you like the pink ones.
Yeah.
Versus you're in like avocado green. And so then we can say, well, look at the market. Like, this is what the market is doing. Where do we want to sit in the spectrum? And these guys are selling at this price. If we want to be at this price, we need to be doing something that's different or not different or the same or different.
Why do you think? Because obviously we've talked a lot on this show about the development community being a copycat kind of community. What do you think the evolution, like, well, how does everything level out, and why? Is it because of a better feedback loop, and is it buyer driven? Is that?
I think it's a bit of both. It comes down to like so I don't know about, I think the reason you do that big matrix is to decide where you want to fit. So for example, in Metrotown, I went through that. We made a decision that we weren't going to have, all the doodads, like the countertop, the what are those things called? The Lazy Susan things that no one can see what I'm doing with my hands.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like the Lazy Susan thing, or the shelf that comes down from the upper shelves, and
right.
So we decided not to do that stuff, but to scale it back, do a really clean design that stripped out some of that cost, and we're able to come in at a price that was maybe $10 less than our competition. So I think what it is it's two things. It's understanding what does the buyer actually care about, and then what do you need to do to be competitive, and do the things that they care about, not just the things that make you feel like there's value there.
Right.
And I also learned that with like options. I think options are a little bit of a chicken shit developer thing, where if you don't know what the buyer wants, it's just option it.
Interesting.
Right? So if you know if you're convicted on what is the right thing for the buyer, you can just go, this is what we're going to do, versus, I don't know, can't decide. Okay, we'll just option it.
Yeah.
And there's a strategy around that. Like, you can option to understand, like, what do people care about? If they pay for it, then sure. Then in the next one, maybe you include it, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. I get that. But I find sometimes we use the options as I don't know,
like a hedge.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a hedge. That's maybe a nicer way to say it.
Chicken shit. Chicken shit works.
Yeah. So I think so. So that's one part of it is understanding the landscape. And then the other part of it is I get a ton of feedback from realtors. So people that we have relationships with have done, call it the focus group, where they're telling, and we put on the wall, like, would you choose this walk-in closet or a double vanity? Because you can't have both.
Yeah.
Then they go, well, my clients would prefer the double vanity versus the walk-in closet.
Well, I would imagine MLA and Magnum is giving you, like, they're hearing everything on the floor. It's like constant feedback.
Yeah, and the benefit of the Magnums and the Rennies and the MLAs is that they have other data points from other projects. Right? I only know what I know from my own direct feedback and from relationships in the real estate community, versus lots of different data points.
So in many cases, it sounds like you're like the deal or no deal guy too, because you're representing the vendor on the negotiations.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're okay.
Well, and that's the interesting. I was thinking about this on the way over here. Is that so? I've been a seller for a decade and a half, right? So sitting in the seat of signing deals and saying deal or no deal or countering, and so it's quite an interesting to think about the evolution of the market in different markets. So you go back to 2019 and think about what early 2019 felt like as a market, and it was the doldrums. Like there was and we had launched a project in late 2018 and sold, like, we caught the tail end of a market, and we were giving away nothing. And then you move into, and we had to have our pre-sale requirements, so we gave away a little bit more. And those the next 100 buyers, it took probably, we sold 150 things in 2 months, and then it took 6 months to do another 50. And do you think those 50 got a slightly better deal than the first 100?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they did.
Right.
Just because we needed to get to pre-sale.
Yeah.
And so and time was not on our side, and the market, like the buyers, there was just no market. So you had to make a market. And we did all kinds of crazy stuff. But we got to our pre-sale number. The project ended up doing really, really well. And, over the time, like, the market did this at the end, and, all those buyers were just fine. So it closed at a higher price point once, in 2022, middle of 2022 when it closed. Sure. All those early buyers did just fine.
Right.
But there was a little blip in the middle where some people got lucky. And that's where I talk about, like, if we come back to the west side, like I don't know if this is a term or not, but I talk about the counter-cyclical investor. So you kind of want to be if you're really an investor, you want to be a buy when the market's going up and, like, it's going to be a home run. But if you really want to get into it, these are the opportunities now.
Right.
Is to be a little bit of a counter-cyclical investor when everybody's on the sideline. This is where you can pick up some deals.
So yeah, that's maybe a great kind of point to move to. We were talking before we went live. Like Peterson has, we mentioned that project on the east side, but their portfolio is heavily weighted towards the west side.
Yeah. Right
now, and the west side. I mean, our podcast, I think, is an example of this. Like, we don't talk all that much about the west side.
It's interesting because we've watched I remember, like, we've watched the east side, the gap between the west side and the east side, and also the stigma maybe around parts of the east side changed so much over the past, close to 10 years that we've been doing this show. And now it's to the point that, people talk about the almost like the rebirth of the west side, because we're clearly going into this moment now where the west side is changing with multiplexes, with upzoning, also with what's coming. And I mean, this is really what we want to focus on.
Yeah, totally.
Today.
That was a long introduction.
Well, no, I mean, all of that
Sorry,
all of that is incredibly, all of that is fantastic context. But I think the big thing is like thinking about the west side, maybe. Maybe first of all, like, why do you think Peterson is so weighted?
Good. Well, I can't really speak to too much history. Just
right, of course.
Asterisk the fact that January. So what I've been able to learn is that we're believers in the long term. So Ben Young, who owns the company, has been around for a while. So he's not here for today or tomorrow, but 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. Like the mindset is very long term. So I come from my trajectory through the business has been through the merchant developer, where we're turning all the time, right? Yeah. So we don't intracorp, we don't hold assets. It's just turn it all the time. So Peterson's a bit different from that perspective. They believe in the longer term. It's just a long term play. So I would say that's probably one thing, is that if you think about a blue chip kind of location, the west side really checks all the boxes. So it's already something. If you think about Oak Ridge, go back to Oak Ridge 20 years ago, it was already cool. Like, it was already, people wanted to be there, retailers wanted to be there. It was, I think it's kind of the second highest retail rates in the country. So like Oak Ridge has always been a thing. It's just getting a shot in the arm. And I think Peterson saw that and believed in it maybe before other people clearly lots of people believe that. Grosvenor, right. Mayfair West,
sure,
West Bank, Oak Ridge, people obviously believe that. It's just, I think Peterson is thinking the long term. It doesn't matter for Peterson whether it takes a year or 10 years or 20 years. Like Langara Gardens is going to be a thing. It's already a perfectly happy income-producing property that provides rental homes to a whole bunch of people, but it's going to be a bigger thing in a decade's time.
And right. That's going to be
a decade and a half's time.
And just for listeners, Langara Gardens is a future master planned community.
Yes.
And it's all rental, or?
No, there'll be a component of strata, but it's mostly rental.
And you're doing that with Concert Properties?
That is a partnership with Concert Properties, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And 20 acres just on the west side, like, how?
Yeah, that's
how cool is that? And I kind of talk about the big three being kind of Oak Ridge Park, the Mayfair West by Grosvenor, and then the Heatherlands. Like those three on their own, and then you add Langara Gardens as a fourth. And I don't really even think about it today because it's kind of a long term. It's longer term than those other three communities. Right. But you take those three things, and as they evolve and get going and get the momentum behind them, and things start happening, it's going to change the landscape entirely. You guys know Ken Leong. I sat down with Ken last week, Ken and Mary, and kind of picked their brain because they've been around for ages. And Ken talks about back
he's
in
a very smart guy.
Yeah, right, and kind of numbers human, and kind of I drink his Kool-Aid a bit. So he talks about back in the day we have the golden triangle of why people loved the zone, and the golden triangle I think was like, what is it, Shaughnessy, Kerrisdale, South Granville.
Right.
And that's evolved into the Golden Circle by the addition of Oak Ridge and South Canby. So you add those, and I pulled like the current listings just ahead of this in that zone, and it's almost a perfect circle. It's kind of cool. So like that zone has, people want to be in that zone, and there's a new reason to be there. And that's all the stuff that's coming.
Ken also had joined Oakwin around that time, and it's the Golden Circle is the whole brand. So
okay,
bear that in mind.
So maybe he's a bit self-serving there, right?
I know. I'm just thinking, like, one of the things we've talked a lot about, like, on the show is, you know, the start of Yaletown going from industrial or Olympic Village, or, you know, moving into Brentwood. Same thing. It's like imagining residential communities where residential communities didn't really exist. This strikes me as something entirely different, and it is obviously because the West Side, as you said offline, is like a mature community. It has a history. It has an identity. How do you think about, what are the challenges, I guess, to kind of reimagining a community that is like the elite spot to be in Vancouver?
Yeah. Oof. I think there's the challenges of change. People don't always love change.
Right.
So, you know, when you think about what these communities will bring, they'll also bring some diversity to the community, which I would say is a good thing for vibrancy and life, and kind of the extra shot in the arm is that you'll have a range of humans and of different, you know, economic backgrounds and strengths, and all living in that zone, which I think is super positive for any community.
Right.
And you know, I worked with when I started with George, the developer that was developing Quintet, talked about in Asian culture, and so white guy.
Right.
So I'm just going to say what he said was, we think where there's lots of people, that means good things. So that means life, prosperity, vibrancy. Lots of people is good things. And he was talking about, like, we just want to get lots of people to the events, right? So but my point is, when you talk about a new community that's evolving and it's got lots of different people, that brings life and vibrancy, and they're going to spend money, and they're going to bring their kids to the new daycare, and they're going to take Oak Ridge is building its 5-story community center.
Right.
Like, that's going to be a thing. There's the new community center on the West Side being developed, which I think is the biggest since like Hillcrest and like 15 years ago. So there's all those amenities that are going to help and be a spot for the new people that will live in the rental and the condos. And so it's got to change. And I think that will be hard for some people, because they, you know, I like my West Side my West Side is. But the addition of humans and amenities will bring a kick of life.
Like, I think, and also it's interesting because I don't think people really quite understand the scale of Oak Ridge and where it's going. Like, I mean, I've heard people at the city basically refer to it as like downtown south. Like, the future is like, it's going to be like another downtown almost.
Yeah, I think that's bang on. Until I started really digging into it, so in my previous world, I was part of launching and selling Bell Park on the West Side on 52nd and just off Canby, and then Livingston House, a little 55, which is actually funny because it's between Canby and the project that I'm currently going to be doing. Ashley, it's right there, and at that time it was all future. It was just like a twinkling in the eye, and now it's all happening, and Oak Ridge is going up, and I think definitely I think when we talk about downtown, I think the difference is I think about like lawyers' offices and so maybe not that, but Oak Ridge has always had like a medical component.
Right.
So now you add in like next level retail and the additional humans, and it's definitely another energy center. So maybe
like fine dining, new parks, new community centers. Like you can see.
And so this is not, again, I'm not the target market for this, but the French retailer Chaumet is a brand that I think it's a jewelry brand that's opening in.
Yeah,
you guys are the target market. Yeah.
We're the target market.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but the first store in North America is in Oak Ridge.
Right.
Like,
you call
go
it
figure.
Hermes, don't you? You're not the target.
I don't even get the joke.
I don't even. Yeah.
Okay, but that's actually because I had a question here, just thinking about this, the idea of like going into a mature neighborhood and giving it the shot in the arm, and the shot in the arm being like thousands of homes, much more density. There is still, and I think that speaks to it, like a barrier. A barrier of entry,
point.
Right?
Yeah.
And like one thing we've talked a lot about on the show is that if you chart the stats in Vancouver over the last Metro Vancouver, it's like a lot of it is chasing affordability.
Yeah.
Right. Like
definitely.
How do you kind of thread that needle of like the barrier to entry and affordability and
thousands of homes
and thousands of homes that are actually occupied by a diverse community, right?
I don't know. That's the short answer.
But
I think
that's actually, I ran by Oak Ridge last night, and I literally thought that was what I was thinking. Like, how? It's interesting you say I don't know, because I was like, how does this actually work?
I think how it works. So here's the thing. So on the affordability thing, so we've done just over 20 deals at Ashley, at call it just shy of $1,800 a foot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gobsmacked in this market with the sentiment and like we've done 20 deals on a 4-story concrete building on the west side. Like, go figure.
Mm-hmm. It's a real product, actually. It's pretty nice. Special.
Thank you.
To be on such a quiet, it's pretty special.
And it's 4 stories and it's concrete, so it's kind of unique that way.
Nice
so you've
boutique.
got, check.
Yeah.
But 20 deals, right? And at a time I was like, we've written more deals there than we have at Frame on the east side, which is way less money. Smaller homes.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah. But so I think my point is that the west side market is resilient. There's some resources here that, and maybe they get that, it's going to close in, I don't know, like 2028. So I think we all believe that interest rates will be a lot lower.
Yeah.
And so they've got the gumption to say, okay, like it's going to go down. But I'm taking a position today because the product is cool. So, and 20 deals is not 200 deals, right? So we're not threading the needle of thousands of homes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what needs to happen is interest rates need to come down a little bit. The world needs to believe that, okay, we're not going to have another crazy situation where interest rates go up again, or, it just needs to, and if you track like you do, sales over the last 15 years, and then you overlay the 5-year bank rate, it's almost the correlation between high volume and low interest rates is almost stupid. It's so closely correlated.
Of course, interesting.
And so I think we need a little bit of help from, maybe the
June
Bank of
5th.
Canada, exactly. If they took interest rates and interest and mortgage payments and stuff out of the basket of goods, I'm no economist, but but I've been paying attention for the last couple of years. Let's get that basket of goods redialed in.
What's in the box?
Yeah, exactly. A different what's in the basket. Yeah. So I'm not answering the question because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a few things that need to go in our favor. I think the purpose-built rental all those projects have a component of purpose-built rental that the factors that are checking those boxes, it's easier to make those deals work than condo deals right now because of the financing. And I think Daryl was talking about that the other day, just because of the support around purpose-built rental. Those humans, those things are going to get built, which will attract a human and be a place for someone to live. So there's that right off the bat, and then you can layer in the condo. I think the condo it's harder to make the deals work. And the pre-sale requirement, like my next 2 projects are what we've got Cambion 43rd, which is it's 175 homes,
right?
And then there's a hotel component, so we have a 15-story hotel going into that, and so that 149 homes, that's not too scary from a pre-sale. 175 homes, not too scary. 29 stories from a pre-sale requirement, but on Manson and Ash, we have 2 towers of 18 stories, and that's 250 homes. So that at 65 to 70% pre-sale, that's you have to get through a lot of homes before you can start digging, and you've got your 12-month window to do that, which is great that it's not 9 months, but it's still, at like, call it $1,800-$1,900 a foot. That's an expensive home. So our one bedrooms there will probably start at $850 to $1 million, and then going up from there. And so the affordability is a thing, but there is a market for the right home and the right price that's done right close to Oak Ridge. I think that those things check.
Right.
And it looks like a deal compared to Oak Ridge itself.
Like I'm thinking about when we think about the West Side, the narrative is downsizers. Is that who's the buyer? Is that Ashley? Like, because I would imagine there's also a lot of young families or people that maybe they have their parents on the West Side.
People that grew up on the West Side.
People that grew up on the West Side.
Yeah. Definitely.
The people that are on the West Side, there's always a strong demand for people that want to maybe stay on the West Side, but just need different types of housing, right?
And I would that's definitely the case. And I would say the downsizer is the smaller component of that story for the buyer. A lot of it is a young human who's maybe getting some help from a parent, or they've built up equity somewhere else, and they're coming into something now with help from a parent with a deposit. So that we do see that, and I hate to say use the same word everybody uses about the bank of mom and dad, or the bank of grandma. But it's true. And so that is a definite buyer. And then there's also a buyer who is a parent buying for a kid right out of school. So they've finished university. They're now starting to get into the workforce, or they will be in the workforce in a few years' time. And the parent is buying them like a 1-bedroom condo.
Right.
And it's not my parents.
I was going to say, Matt, the graduation gift.
Yeah, but it's a thing. Like, think about how, I think I talk to younger humans that I work with, and, oftentimes a parent has helped them or their friends just bought a house, and I'm like, how do they do it? Well, their parents helped them out a little bit.
And their parents have the means, and they want to keep them close, and it makes sense.
It makes total sense. Mm-hmm. It makes total sense. And
sorry, go on.
No, so I'd say that is more of a thing than we talk about it. The media talks about it a little bit, but it is a true thing.
You see it more and more in the past, few years. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's at least down payments are almost for younger people almost always gifted. To some percent. Right?
And it ties with why deposit structure is such a big deal right now, because money is not free. And I think in previous cycles, people have pulled money out of a house to pay for their deposits on the pre-sale, which is why a 20% deposit is no problem, and they pay it on time all the time, because it costs very little to pull out of a house and pay the interest on it. Versus today, that's a painful thing if you're doing 5% plus.
This is funny. So actually, we do this MLA pre-sale pulse thing where they send us these interesting little tidbits, and one of them was that incentive is actually like
deposit structure.
The incentive that's really working right now is dropping deposit structures.
Right, because I didn't hear a peep about deposit structure for for years. Right, years.
And in fact, sometimes they were 25%.
25%, exactly. Yeah, or 30% for a foreign buyer.
Right.
So fast forward, what changed? And that's the only thing I can think of, is that people were funding that deposit by pulling it out of something else and now it's just like, nope.
Right.
It's not going to do it at 7%.
Yeah.
Right? That's just crazy money. So I don't know if that's a thing, or it's just having the cash on hand is tricky.
I'm just thinking about this idea of the counter-cyclical. Like, we've been talking about 10 years of the gap between the east side and the west side it makes the east side interesting in 2013, 2014. And it's slowly gotten smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Now the west side looks so attractive.
In a lot of ways. So is it,
definitely,
do you see it as a wave that's kind of like you got a kiddie pool where you've picked up one side and all the water goes east, and then it's going to come back gangbusters?
I think gangbusters with an asterisk, like a small g asterisk, gangbusters small g maybe.
Okay.
In that we are talking about higher price points. We're talking about tough price points, right? So So I think what we can look at is I mean, I pulled like the last 6 months worth of sales somewhere here. I've got it. And it's generally like the west side is like 100 and something transactions of concrete homes, 5 years and younger. Like that number doesn't really change that much, like 136 homes in the last 6 months. Median price point of $1,328 a foot. So like that, I feel like what we're saying is that will push up, that once that volume starts picking up, then the price will follow. Like there's, we know that prices are lagging, lags volume.
Yeah.
And so as we start seeing that, like that wave coming, like it's going to push it a little bit. But I don't think we're talking about a tidal wave, but definitely the activity is going to breed more activity. And as the momentum gets going, people will start seeing it.
Wait, do you have any thoughts? And just thinking about, because you have a project in on Earl and Kingsway there, which is kind of, there's a lot of new construction right there.
Yeah.
And then you have these projects on the west side. Like, this is maybe, I'm trying to think how to frame this. It doesn't sound kind of silly, but like, what's an appropriate gap in the price per square foot? Because most stuff, like you could speak to exactly what the price per square foot is. On
just shy of 1,300.
Yeah, and then on the east side,
so we're just shy of 1,300 on the east side for the pre-sale, like concrete. So it's 10-story concrete. So it's it's a kind of different product a little bit, and then we're just shy of 1,800.
So it's like a $500
delta between the two. Yeah. So and that's a big nut. But I think for the right buyer, and it's got to come down to interest rates.
Yeah.
Right? Like the cost of carrying if you put down 30% or something, like the cost of carrying that has got to just be a little bit easier for people.
Right.
Yeah.
So like one thing we were talked about before is just this kind of gap between resale and pre-sale. And you just brought it up, right?
Yeah.
Like 1,300, 1,328 on the west side for, what is that, 5-year-old concrete.
Yeah.
So that's very similar to what you're buying
brand new on Kingsway and exactly.
So can you talk a little bit about that gap and the challenges there? And does it make sense?
Well, that is so you've hit on a thing that is like my little pet thing. Like I've tracked this across all submarkets for the last So since about 2018, I really started paying attention to this gap and trying to dial in like what is the gap and why is there a gap and what drives the gap. And it's really interesting. Like it varies based on kind of just the sales to listings ratios. Like I try to correlate, like, is it when the sales to listing ratios go up, does the gap expand? And I think what I've discovered, what I've really observed is that we in the pre-sale world feel the change in the market way after it happens in the resale world. So what will happen is if you think about late 2020, the resale world started cranking. We didn't feel it in the pre-sale world until early 2021. I was still getting ground down on deals in Metrotown in late 2020, and on a townhouse project in Coquitlam, I was still not selling lots of homes quickly and like having to do little giveaways and what have you to get the deals done and when I look back at the resale at that time, it was like month over month, it was way over 10-year averages for those months. But we didn't feel it yet. We only felt it like 3 or 4 months later, once people started missing out on deals on the resale, then they come to us.
Yeah.
So I think as that happens, then the gap gets wider when there's not a lot of pre-sale inventory in the market, and suddenly the human misses out on the resale.
Yeah.
And now I'm pointing it at him or Matt.
Yeah.
And then the human misses out on the resale. So then they come into a pre-sale thing and they miss out on the pre-sale because there's not a lot. Like they go to 3 places and they miss out, and now the price starts expanding because now I can get it as a developer. Now I've got more elasticity on my price. I can start jacking that.
So it's Daryl Simpson said, who was on the show, this was his first appearance on the show. He said it was, I think, 3 months. When the resale market gets going, it's 3 months after that you'll start to feel it in pre-sale.
Yeah, so
which is, I think, a great indicator for buyers, right? Like people that have been, like if the resale market starts moving, like you maybe you shouldn't be dragging your feet on negotiating back and forth with someone like yourself. Right?
Yeah. Just get it done.
Get it done.
Yeah. So, and that's real. Like we literally don't feel it until, that 3 or 4 months. And then we start and we go, oh shit. And, off we go. But I think so that gap is also driven by, as that price starts going, then developers like me will make a land buy at a number based on what the pre-sales are doing. And that sets a new a new base. So then I buy my land based on what the current transactions are in the pre-sale world. And that's what the land guys then say, okay, now they sold at 90, I remember Jinju selling at like $900 a foot in Burquitlam, or $890 or something. And then that was suddenly like all the brokers, that's the new number. And so all the land people, the price just went dunk on the land. So now we're committing to land at a higher number. And so the baseline just went up. So now that gap between resale and pre-sale is not set because I committed to my dirt at this price. And so that's when you get into like the west side. I used to, when we were doing the Bell Park thing, I would take out the West Bank Oak Ridge projects from that little analysis of what is the gap between pre-sale and resale, because they were just so $2,100 a foot versus your resale number at 13 something. It was just out of whack, right? So I'd take that out as an outlier and then look at what is the difference. And generally I would find like at any given time in the market over the last decade, we've been between 4% and like 25% variance between the resale number and the pre-sale number.
Man, when was 4%?
Right? I can tell you exactly when it was. It was in Metrotown in 2019 and late 2020. 4% was the difference between the typical pre-sale sale price and the resale number, which was like $1,190 or something, or $1,204 or whatever. Yeah. And then, on the west side, you've got something it's more pronounced. So like we won't even talk about downtown because like that variance is crazy. Yeah. But on the outside of downtown, the west side has it's about 20% difference. And I can't it's just based on what people committed to for land, what it costs to build the thing. And today that number is astronomical and not slowing down. And so you end up with a number that you have to be. And I think that's one of the things that's a bit scary about being a developer today is that we're not all talking about what can the market bear. We're talking about what price can I deliver it for? The bank wants to see 12%. The city wants to have me not more than 15%, so I've got to thread the needle between 12 and 15% to make a project work when construction prices are going up every month.
Do you think that the gap, because downtown clearly has got to be the biggest gap in the region?
Definitely.
My thinking is that bodes really well for the resale market downtown, which we've been kind of beating that drum, but it just doesn't seem to be.
No one knows
at how soft downtown is, all things considered, right? Yeah. I mean, we've had people on here basically saying look, most things are below replacement cost.
Yeah. And also we have just anecdotally our own listings. Would you imagine 5 years ago or 8 years ago saying, would you rather have a pretty nice one bit downtown or something at Knight and Kingsway? Yeah. And it's cool. Now you're Knight and Kingsway all day. It will be super busy. It's just a strange moment.
In the inventory, in pockets of downtown, there's lots of inventory right now where kind of consistently there's never a lot of inventory, certain buildings or certain pockets. So what
do you think drives that?
Well, I think right now just inventory creeping up over the last few months.
Just not
we've
being
seen a lot of.
right?
I also think part of it is we're seeing. I think this is maybe in more of the smaller. There's a lot of rental units downtown. I think a lot of people are listing right now because of the new rental rules. Maybe some triggered by the cap gain.
Yeah,
you know.
But
I think some of that stuff is probably a result of policy,
or just layers and layers of new policy. Right? Like it's like
which
people are throwing up their hands.
And then also, I mean, this was we talked about this on the show recently, but this idea of like we always think of buyers on the sidelines, but we never really think about sellers on the sidelines. And sellers have been sitting patiently, like real estate's a sport in this city, and the idea of like going on the market when you don't feel like it's the right time. People will wait, but they can't wait forever.
No, exactly.
So
so
and everybody waited all last year.
Yeah. So that's the regular human waited all last year, and then you got developers that are waiting because, all of the pressure points don't make sense and the pro forma doesn't work.
Right.
So you've got developer sellers waiting too, and we have a deadline too, because sometimes that burn rate is. You got to decide where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking right now, like there's been like cheap money versus expensive money now.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time. Like, how important do you think June 5th is in the mind of the development community?
I think it's really important. I mean, so this is how important it is. Prior to things starting to go up inflation-wise, when was the last time you ever thought about the Bank of Canada interest rate announcement, right?
I know way more than I care to know about the Bank of Canada.
Right? I have the dates in my calendar.
Well, the fact that we can say basket of goods and everybody's like, I also agree with you that we should be taking out shelter costs.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought? So I think it's really important. I think will it make a difference to the pre-sale buyer, like materially? No. But that's the sentiment. Right? Like it's just the sentiment, like it just means, okay, like we're on a trajectory. The thing that we think that interest rates will be lower later, well, they will, because look, the bank just dropped their interest rate. So I think that definitely will make a difference. Yeah. I was going to say, I have an idea for you guys. I think it would be really great if you got Erik Carlson on here to talk about how do we survive the 90s, right? Like if you think about high interest rates, weird, like or someone like that, like
Erik Carlson has an open invite on this program.
So, and the question is, how do we survive the 90s, right? Like, how do we survive? Layers of different things, interest rates, politics.
Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't had him on the show for probably 5 years, so I think this
Giddy up. This is a good time.
It is a good time.
Maybe have me back with Erik so I can ask him.
Yeah. Special guest host.
That's right.
Amazing. Well, I think we got to talk a little bit about market predictions and what you think. What do you think happens in the balance of 2024?
I think we're gonna bump along a little bit. And with a bit of an upward trajectory. So I've been watching, and I watch like an eagle the monthly sales and how they relate to the 10-year average for that month. And so I'm just watching that thing, and watching for the little. I have a grey and a blue bar for the blue bar to grow as it relates to the grey bar being the historical average for that month. So I'm looking forward to I think we're going to have a little probably what it will look like in reality is a bit of a blip and then a slow kind of grind up, but hopefully there's an up. I'm kind of naturally an optimist, so there's always an up in my world.
Matt has a question about a niece that he can't
ask.
Okay, all right, hit me.
I have it written here. So okay, you got a niece, she calls you up, she says, what should I buy? Investment. Say what?
$2 million.
What do we give you? $2 million.
Okay, so
$2 million might be too high, but
maybe let's pretend she's got it like $1.3 million, $1.4 million.
Yeah.
All right.
So you're thinking of a specific unit?
Oh yeah, I got
it. The C2 plan. It's obvious.
Exactly. Overlooking the lane. Yeah. Because there's not going to be anything back there ever. Yeah, exactly. And there's a plunge pool next door. Like it's close to the elevator, so you can get to the rooftop. Yeah. I got the one. Yeah. Hook me up. So I would say if are you shopping all over the Lower Mainland?
All over the Lower Mainland, best opportunity right now.
So I would go with the So I would pick one of three spots. So if I take off my blue hat, which is the Peterson hat,
right?
I personally am a fan of Metrotown. I think the Metrotown market is again a little bit of a mature market, so it has some similarities to the West Side in that it's a bit of a mature market. People get the brand, they get what it's all about. So I would say a Metrotown thing because there's a lot of inventory, and you're probably going to get a bit of a better deal than you would have got when I was selling stuff in Metrotown in 2023. So,
and are you thinking resale or pre-sale?
I just think pre-sale.
It's also so incredibly convenient to live in Metrotown. Like I feel like
it's incredible.
It is. It really is.
And so I'm a white guy, and so white people normally look at me and go, "Why?" Like, Barrett, no, Metrotown. Like Metrotown is awesome. Like I had a construction human that moved into one of our condos in Metrotown. He's like, "I'm never leaving. Like I can walk everywhere. Like why would I want to go anywhere else? You can, you got." And I think so. This is Barrett's personal view. Metrotown is more about Crystal Mall than it is about the big mall.
The Metrotown.
Yeah, it's like Crystal Mall. Like you can get all the things.
Or whatever
yeah, exactly. It's not sure it's about that, but like really, it's about the convenience of being able to get all the different things.
Yeah,
and the diversity of the different food and you got TNT right there. You got all the things. Anyway, I'm a Metrotown fan.
Screen replaced. All right, so Metrotown is number one.
Metrotown's number one. The other one, and I would say for inventory, like if she's like really well heeled, then I would say like if you're looking for, so being a biased human that I am, I would have to say Ashley, just like because you got time to come measure the couch, right? Like the space for the couch.
It is, and I know I've already said this, but it is truly. We've kind of watched Ashley since the early days with through MLA, and it's actually a really cool. Like it's. I was thinking about it. Like especially if you're coming from like the detached market or something, because it is very boutique. Like a lot of people are not looking to sit on an elevator and go up 25 floors or something.
Exactly.
Like it is a pretty special project that way.
And coming in, like from the outside, like January, a hot minute, like a concrete 4-story building. Like, come on. Like, where are you going to get that?
Yeah.
Like, it's not, no one's going to do that again in a hurry.
And it's not can be like it's also got it's different from the typical offerings of can be, right?
Yeah, and we're doing a whole thing right now on the kitchens because the kitchens are lights out, and so like the spec is really amazing. Like it fits really well together. It's got like beautiful marble. It's just like it's a next level offering. So if she's well heeled, then I would say that.
All right, and then you had a
third. The third one, go where the inventory is, Burquitlam. So lots of opportunities in Burquitlam right now, and I think that's another community that's kind of early in its days. It's going to be an awesome location over time as it gets built out and as the amenities start showing up.
Right.
Yeah. But and then for so those
so
would be my three.
Two communities that are mature, and then we have
an up and comer.
Burquitlam people have lived there forever. They're probably screaming like, "What are you talking about? Not mature?" But
from
Quitlam.
In terms of transformation, though.
In terms of its transformation with the transit nodes and when I was working with George in 2011, we launched a little project called Bloom, some townhomes in Burquitlam, and it was not the neighborhood that it is today.
No, right.
Like it was not the neighborhood. Like if that thing today would sell like crazy, but it took forever to get us through that inventory. Mm-hmm. It's just a different time. The SkyTrain was a fledgling. Maybe it's going to happen.
Those are three fantastic.
But definitely like the inventory is the thing. Like if there's inventory, you're going to get you have a chance to measure the couch.
Yeah.
Right. We do have this segment called the 5-Wire, lighthearted questions we end every show with. Can you stick around for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Question number one book that you've read recently that you would recommend for our listeners.
Okay, so I have I haven't finished one of them, which is it's kind of I have a World War II, World War I interest, and so it's called the Bastard Brigade. I can't remember who it's by, but it's a cool book. It's all about
Bastard Brigade.
Brigade. Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be a movie starring Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with all the race for the nuclear thing. So it's all about
okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of cool because like those guys were all just making shit up as they went. Like there was no, like it was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think you have a lot of pressure in your
Right?
life, eh?
Yeah.
In the last few years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Okay. So a few years ago, I started working out consistently in the mornings, which is a thing. So like I have this whole thing in the morning. So I did a little bit of reading, meditation, I work out. And then in last July, I committed to doing a bit of a ridiculous mountain bike ride in Europe this year. And so I've been training since January for that. So I've added a lot of riding to my world. So I commute into work 2 or 3 times a week, and then I'm squeezing in spin sessions all the time. And
when's the race or the
July, the first week of July.
And can you give us what's the context of the race?
So to be completely clear, it's not the race. There is a race it's called the Stone King Rally. And it's a 6-day race starts high up in the Alps in France and ends on the water in Italy. And it's 6 days of kind of 40 to 60 kilometers a day with ridiculous up and down. And so I'm not doing that, just to be clear. Okay. So you can do
you can watch that on TV.
Yeah. But you can do a tour where you follow the route with it. So so it's super cool. So there's 16 of us going and 2 shuttles. And you just follow the route. So you do the same route, but you don't race. So there's no pressure of like you're gonna.
I love this. I've been thinking about this. It's Jesse Itzler, I think his name is, but he's got this idea that every year you should do something big that you almost like you're creating chapters in your life.
Okay, cool.
So like every year is punctuated by something, but I feel like you always think back to 2024, and that will probably be what brings you back, right? Is that
and what I didn't expect is the journey has been so cool. Yeah. So I've been I'm fitter than I've been in 2 decades, and I feel great. Like it's amazing.
Huh.
So it's been super cool. Yeah. But I don't have children that are 2 and 4 years old. They don't need me to make breakfast.
That's why I'm so out of shape. It's the children.
It's the children. They extract their pound of flesh. Yeah.
Question number 3. What have you been binge watching lately, or a movie recommendation?
Okay, so I'm kind of off the... So I'm a bit of a rugby fanatic, and so I've been watching the Six Nations thing. It's a documentary on Netflix by the same people that did the F1 series. So it's about the Six Nations rugby tournament in Europe. So between like England, France, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Italy. So it's pretty cool.
Huh.
Yeah. And that's off the back of like last year I went down a rabbit hole of like there was the Rugby World Cup, which South Africa won for the 4th time. So, which is, by the way, the more times than anybody else has ever done it. Just going to say that out there to all the Kiwis that might be listening. Sorry for that.
That's the same league as All Blacks, I guess?
No, so the Six Nations is just the British, it's just in Europe. Yeah. So it's England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, and Italy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's cool. It just gives you a bit of insight into the craziness of rugby.
Yeah.
Favorite band or music?
Oh, my word.
No, I'll let you know. Go.
No, I grew up under a musical rock. So I have, I'm the most...
I was going to say, what is it, Saving Silverman? Or no, that's not it. What's the
Saving
Sugarman?
Sugarman. Yeah. Sugarman.
I thought you were going to say a regime.
No, I'm clueless. Like I grew up under a rock. So I rely on my children for music. I was introduced recently to Noah Kahan. He was, I think, just here. So that's been my kind of go-to recently. Yeah,
pretty catchy stuff. Coffee house music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, doesn't require too much brain space.
Right. And last but not least, something that you've purchased for under $1,500 that's had a positive impact on your life.
So I would definitely my Garmin watch. Like I got a Fenix 6 Pro, whatever, when I started this little getting fit journey recently, and it's awesome.
Does it work well with your phone?
Yeah, they've just actually introduced a new app for the phone that just like it's great. Like it syncs up
Does
easily.
it do those watches give you your VO2 age, right?
That's right. Yeah.
How old are you?
Oh my word. Okay.
This is getting a little personal.
Okay, so this is a cool thing. This is why the thing is so cool. I just actually I now have a 5 handle in front of my age in real life IRL. So I just turned 50 in April, and it's a hard number to go. But my age thing is 41.
Wow.
And when I started this thing and when I started training in January, it was like 42 or something. So I've dropped a year.
Oh, wow.
My commute time, like riding back to North Van, I've dropped 10 minutes off the commute, which it was an hour and 2 minutes, and it's now 52 minutes or something. And my heart rate has gone down like average 10 beats a minute on the ride back.
No kidding.
Yeah. So this is all like the Garmin watch. It's super cool.
I'm in a
I've gone down the rabbit
max
hole.
crisis right now. I'm 65.
It's the children.
It's funny, but we had this call. I texted
children.
Matt in a panic yesterday asking him what his VO2 max was because mine has gone down recently because of the type of training that I've been doing. I've been doing more just in the gym, but less cardio.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. It's always a trade-off.
That's cool. What's your?
Well, I just do it with the Apple Watch. So I think what was it, around
45 or 46.
Okay. I'm in the above average. I'm right at the peak. I'm trying to get past, but I think the Garmin is more, I don't know if it's more accurate, but I feel like I'm moving towards Garmin.
It's not as you have to get used to like the funky, like it's not as user friendly.
Yeah.
Like it's very non-Apple from a like.
Well, the thing that I was worried about is I had AirPods, and then I bought, a friend recommended, you got to get these like some other brand, and it like didn't pick up the calls, and it was it just didn't work. You know how Apple's so well integrated. That's the one concern, but I like the idea of the age. That's for sure.
The whole thing's been cool. Like it's just fun to get into the nitty gritty of it and like figure it out, and especially when you got a big goal.
What kind of body fat are you working with?
Save that for the second appearance on the show.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no thanks, I'm good. These guys are kind of weird.
Why do you have a measuring tape? Okay. Well, maybe we'll leave it there. But Barrett, how can people learn more about what you're up to, and of course, Peterson Group?
I would say if you check out Ashley at Oak Ridge, that would be a thing. So go over and maybe register and get the information, and then LinkedIn is a good one. Peterson Group is always posting cool stuff on LinkedIn. Like one of the cool values of the company is giving back, and so there's a lot of outreach and community stuff that we do, which is kind of unique. Like when last time you see kind of gratitude and giving back on the wall of a value, so kind of like that.
I feel like the talent pool at Peterson is huge as well. I feel like it's like, I know we've got a few people we know there that are like just really, really bright people.
It is, and every time I open a new door, there's another smart human. Yeah. Like it's like I keep finding different things that we do that I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Okay. And you're a really cool human too. So it's a good journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you guys. I'm looking forward to further chats.